I'm I'm worried. I make 20-25% less money next year because of these storms that just hit. So we had this big hurricane come through. It hit major sections of North Carolina where I am. I'm a used car dealer here in North Carolina, and it's going to have big term effects for me. I think that prices are going to spike, but we also have some insurance problems that are we're going to be dealing with this for a while. But damage and insurance losses from Hurricane Helene could cost billions. Insurance losses are expected to reach nearly 6.4 billion, and insurance providers might reevaluate how they price policies and what types of coverage they might offer. And this is hitting dealerships. These are businesses, small businesses, big businesses, big franchise dealers that got hit by this hurricane, and all of their inventory has been absolutely wiped. So these insurance companies are now responsible to come in here and pay for a lot of this. So what do you feel like? What are going to be the ripple effects, not only from the insurance side, but we can talk about the dealership side. I know what I'm going to have to be dealing with in the next few months, but what other things do you think that this hurricane is going to cause in the car market for the foreseeable future?
I think that as storms continue to get worse and worse and more frequent, that it is going to become harder and harder to find insurance companies that are going to be willing to write any type of policies in some of these states that are typically very hard hit. I don't know how you could be an insurer in Florida, for instance, knowing how often Florida gets struck with these type of storms, and write homeowners policies or automobile policies in areas that are often flooded. Why, as an insurer, would you want to continue to do that? You can't be getting enough return on the investment of those premiums to cover the losses that you're taking when you have to pay out for the damages. So I know there's like blanket policies for big dealerships, but my guess is that insurance companies are either going to come in and double or triple their rates, or to keep the rates more reasonable, set a limit as to how much they're willing to pay in the case of damage and loss. So it could get so expensive to do business in Florida because of the cost of insurance, if you could get it. It's going. I mean, if we think $1,000 and $1,500 dock fees are unreasonable in Florida now, well, if insurance doubles, get used to $2,000 and $3,000 dock fees, because something's got to be able to pay for the insurance. This could kill the industry. This could kill Florida, for goodness sake. I mean, how can you live there if you can't get automobile insurance, or you couldn't get homeowners insurance? What do you do when the insurance companies pull out?
Yeah, and I can tell you, insurance is a massive expense for us. I'm a small used car dealer, and we've had a bunch of situations in the past. I have employees that love to run cars into other things, mainly other cars. So the thing about when we have our insurance, I pay out of pocket for that stuff.
Yeah.
But now I have cheap cars. So if I have a $3,500 car that an employee runs into, let's say my $1,500 canopy that we just put up, then
I'm guessing that's happened recently.
Not recently. It's happened before, though. As soon as we put that thing up, Jose just ran Ford Taurus right into the side of it.
Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Tell every living person you know that they need to subscribe to Car Sense with Brandon and Ray.
Anyway, but when situations like that happen, we've had a car that was basically totaled. employee ran into another car. I mean, we've had a car stolen. But anytime these things happen, we don't turn it into insurance. We just pay out of pocket because our insurance is already so expensive, and it doesn't make sense for us to turn it into insurance, because then our insurance will go up from where it's at. And this is something that really hits our bottom line as far as an expense goes. And I can't even imagine how much these dealers in Florida are paying, because their inventory can get wiped out just in one storm. I don't know what we would do if we had a big storm come through and wipe out all of our inventory, because I would assume after we get that payout, our insurance would go up so high that we might not even be able to stay in business because of how much it would cost us to insure our cars. So that's something that dealers, just me, that's what I have to deal with, and we haven't gone through a hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, just think about what Florida is about to experience again. It'll be what, 10 days, 11 days since the last major hurricane went through this very same area of Florida. Where dealerships might not even be entirely cleared up yet and cleaned up yet, where insurance companies might not have even stroked the check for the last amount of damage, and they're knowing full well they're going to be stroking another big check after this storm. I mean, you just have to believe at a certain point, insurance companies are going to say enough is enough. There is not enough return that we can make through our investments to justify continuing writing insurance in this area. And can you expect the government to underwrite it? Well, if the government underwrites it, that means you and I are underwriting it. Or it means that if it's the Florida state government, it means the taxpayers of Florida are underwriting. I don't know what the outcome is. I don't know. I just know that insurance prior to all this has gotten so expensive for so many people that I can't begin to imagine how expensive it must be getting for dealerships that are sitting on $15 or $20 million worth of inventory at any one time. I'm pretty sure insurance companies don't like writing a check to their insured for $20 million in one check. They don't care for that. I'm pretty sure they didn't take in $20 million in premiums prior to having to write that check. So it's going to impact the industry, which ultimately means it's going to impact the consumer.
So I will say we are not experts on insurance, but we do know really how the car market moves and how inventory moves. Ray's done it on the new car side. I'm doing it actively right now on the used car side. So let's talk about inventory and what this does for inventory. Now, nationwide, I don't believe that this is going to have a major effect on inventory levels, whether they go up or down. But I will say regionally, something that I'm going to have to deal with, because I am 2 hours away from the hardest hit area in North Carolina, where cities, towns were just wiped off the face of the planet. Those people, maybe not right in the middle right now. I mean, they are not going to be able to buy cars. They're not going to need cars for a while. They're in rebuild mode. But on the outskirts of what was hit the hardest, those cars, I mean, I'm 20 minutes away from Charlotte. There were parts of Charlotte, North Carolina, that were underwater. Those vehicles need to be replaced, and they need to be replaced right now. So what happens in those local zones is that dealers will sell a lot of their inventory because people have to go to work. They have to buy cars right now. So what will end up happening is people, dealers from the mountains, because there's no inventory that's coming into the system from the mountains right now, they'll come down to around Charlotte area where I am, and they'll start buying a lot of our cars. So that increases buying pressure on the wholesale level around where I am, and that will cause prices to spike, because we're not going to get an influx of new cars. I'm sorry, we're not going to get an influx of trade-ins coming from new car dealers selling cars, because a lot of these people that were hurt, that were hit, they're not going to go buy a new car. they're going to buy a used car and they're going to scratch up whatever amount of money that they can, and they're going to try to buy something cheaper. And that doesn't fall in the category of new cars right now. So it's going to dramatically hit my region of the country right now as far as how much prices are going to be. And this is something that I'm worried about. Another layer of this is flood cars. Flood cars will make their way to other parts of the country, and dealers like myself will have to be very aware of what's coming into the system, and we'll have to be more vigilant as far as checking out these cars to make sure we're not buying one of these flood cars that are coming into the system.
Do you think in your area and the surrounding areas near you that what could transpire could be the same type of thing as to what transpired during the height of COVID, when there was a shortage of cars, but there was a strong demand? So, having said that, do you think we will see dealers markedly adjusting the asking prices of their pre-owned vehicles upward because they know people desperately need cars, and they know that there will continue to be a shortage of those cars that people will need?
So there was a big time misconception, for at least on the used car side, where okay, dealers were still buying the cars for the same amount that they were buying them pre-COVID, but
Mhm.
then because there was a demand shortage, they were jacking up these prices. Now, some dealers were obviously jacking up prices. New car dealers were adding extra fees, stuff like this. But on the used car dealer side, what ended up happening on the most of these increases came from us having to pay way more
Yeah.
money for these cars at auction. So I just want to talk about that for a second, just because even though it may look like used car dealers, even maybe myself, have to raise our prices, it might be that that car that I was able to buy for $2,000 this week, next week, all of those $2,000 cars are now $3,000 because there's just none of them there. So if we want to replace our inventory, instead of paying $2,000 for those Camrys that I've been buying, now I'm paying $3,000. So those Camrys last week I was able to sell for 3,000, 3,500 bucks, make 1,000, 1,500 bucks on them. If I want to make that same amount of money, well, guess what? My price is now increased to 4,000, 4,500 bucks. So it might not be even on the dealers that they're just going to predatorily raise prices. Now, saying all that, you know what dealers do. If there's a shortage in cars, if there's a high demand and people wanting to buy cars, they're going to get every dollar that they can. But what I'm just saying with this is, because of the level of inventory, it's not going to be just all of the greed. It's also going to be auction costs that go way up, auction prices that go way up, because there's a shortage of vehicles in our area. And I'll tell you what I'm concerned of is just like exactly what you're saying, the COVID shortage of vehicles, but there was still high demand. What
Mhm.
I'm worried about is that we have a shortage of vehicles making prices go up at the auction, but we still have less demand from the consumer. As we talked last week, my September, my last month, was one of the worst months that we've had in a very, 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 very long time. That's my concern, is that all of our cars are going to get more expensive at auction, but the demand's not going to be there on the other side. So me as a small business owner, I'm not sure what I do. Do I spend more on these cars that I'm not sure that I can sell and make money on just so I have inventory?
Mhm.
Or do we take a break for a while and let prices normalize? But I've also got tax time coming around the corner. That's the best time of the year. In 1 month's time, I'll make 25% of what I make all year long in 1 month. And I have to be prepared for that.
Sure.
But if all of this, if our prices increase before tax time even gets here, I'm I'm worried. I make 20, 25% less money next year because of these storms that just hit.
Do you think, and I hope that's, trust me, I hope that's not the case. Do there's a lot of used car dealers out there that we've talked about that are sitting on inventory that they paid way too much for, or that they own for way too much today, and oftentimes their floor plan lenders are encouraging them to do something with those cars. Do you think the possibility exists that some of these dealers that have been sitting on aged inventory that's overpriced now, because there could be a shortage of used cars because of these storms, can suddenly get off of some of these cars and get their money out of them?
It's going to depend on the consumer. Like I said, what I'm worried about is that prices go up at auction because the availability is just not there. But then on the other side, the consumer is still not willing to pay the prices that we're marking them up for. So it's all going to depend on the consumer. If there is a demand from the consumer, if we have consumers that come down from the mountains and buy cars here, then yes, then these dealers will be able to get out of cars. But consumers don't really travel all that much to go buy cars. Most people are not going to travel to go buy a used car. That we have cases. Now, I'm on YouTube, so I'm an outlier here. There are people that have found my car dealership. They know that we have $3,000 cars. We have had people come from Michigan. We had somebody 2 weeks ago come from South Dakota.
I think so.
Rode a bus to my car lot. Didn't call. Just rode a bus. Showed up. Said, I'm going to buy a car from Brandon. And so I am the outlier here. But for most cases, people do not travel out of their comfort zone to go buy used vehicles. So I don't think that consumers are going to come this way in large quantities to buy these cars. So I think in this localized area, I think a lot of these dealers are going to get hit, myself included, are going to get hit in bad ways because we might be able to sell the cars that we have, but when we go to reload, the prices cost too much. And even if we pay too much for those cars and then bring them back to our lot, I don't think the customer demand is going to be there. So it's going to even exacerbate the problem, I think, for a lot of these used car dealers in my area that are having to deal with this right now.
I agree with you that people tend not to want to travel too far when it comes to buying a car. But if you are in parts of North Carolina in the mountains, Georgia, where the areas were just devastated, there won't be cars for those people to buy without traveling. It could be a long time before there's any type of market buildup again or availability of vehicles in those markets. So that you very well, I think, could see an influx of people from the devastated areas coming your way only because they need a car and there ain't nothing between you and them for them to buy. So part of it could be that. But I hear you. I would be frightened to start overpaying for cars with the hope that the people will be in a position to overpay when we know that so many people are struggling as it is. So it's hard to imagine that those who are struggling can suddenly struggle a little more and pay a little more. I don't see how that happens.
And here's the problem. Like, we have to start loading up for tax time next month. This is my biggest worry because we have to be buying cars. And even if they're too much, I'm going to buy them. I'm going to pay it because at tax time, I've got to have cars that are under $5,000 for my. I have people that come to my car lot every year when they get their tax checks and they walk in the doors. Hey, Brandon, you're my car spot. So I got my tax check back. I got $4,500. What you got for me? And it's happened like that every single year. And there was one year, 2021. I don't know if you remember what happened then, but in 2021, we did not have cars under $5,000 that year because prices went up so high and there were so few cars at auction. It was a miserable year. We missed tax time altogether. I had cars on my lot that were 6, 7. We had a Hummer that was $9,000 on our lot. I hated it. That was the worst year ever, and it felt icky. We weren't making any more money on these cars than we usually do, but we had so much more money in the cars that we actually had on our lot. I don't want to go back to that. That worries me a lot.
You know, you mentioned that September was one of the worst months you've ever had in the history of your store. How has the first 7 days of October been?
We sold, I think, 3 yesterday.
What's today?
What's today?
Tuesday.
Today's Wednesday. Yeah.
Today's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, today's Tuesday. We were closed yesterday.
Right.
We must have sold 3 Saturday then.
Technically, we didn't. We sold 1 on Saturday.
We sold 1 on Saturday, so that's not good.
We sold 3 on Friday.
We sold 3 on Friday. So it's not. I mean, we're not hitting the cover off of the ball like we did in August. So it's going to take probably another the rest of this week. Ask me again next Tuesday when we get on the show.
I promise you I will, because I'm curious as to what you see going on, because I had suspicions all during the month of September that, at least especially on the new car side, that it wasn't going to be a particularly strong month. And as it turned out, it was not a particularly strong month for the new car side of things. And I'm curious as to how October plays out. And my suspicion is that I don't think we really see people back in the market spending and doing things until after the election. I think there is probably so much election fatigue that even if people wanted to do something, they just not right now. I mean, that's almost the way I feel about things at the moment, because it's just so tiring. So I wouldn't be surprised if October, I hate to say this, on the new car side of things, is equally as slow as September was. And my hope is that you won't find October to be a slow month on the used car side, but I would not be surprised if it were.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hearing from a lot of dealers. I mean, we look at some of these forums and stuff, and they're having bad. So we were hoping that it was just a blip for our dealership, but we're seeing it. It seems like it's market wide right now. So what usually happens, and I don't remember what happened in election year last time, but usually in October is traditionally a good month for at least our dealership, and from the other used car dealers that I've talked to around my area, October is always good. And seems like tax time's great, and then of the fall months, October is usually pretty great too, and that's what our numbers have shown over the years. I've done it for 13 years. October has always been a good month for us. So that's what I'm really looking at, because if October is also a crappy month, then that's probably going to be telling for what the market's doing. Unless it's just all about the election and people don't want to spend money until they know which crappy person's going to be in the office next. So.
I think there's a certain amount of election and political fatigue, and it's just it just becomes so burdensome after a while that it'll be nice when the election's over and I don't know, we can get our lives back. You know, I live outside of Atlantic City, and my major local channels are Philadelphia based, and Philadelphia is part of Pennsylvania, which is considered a very important swing state. You can't go 10 minutes of watching television here and not see 2, 3, 4 political. It is just so absolutely disgusting and wearing and tiring that I think ultimately it impacts everybody. Has just got to be so sick of this, so that when the election ends on November 5th, and then all the bitching and moaning can start on November 6th, but hopefully we won't. I guarantee you on November 6th, you're not going to see any more political ads on TV, and it'll be like, yeah, we're back, baby. Life is good again. And I can't wait for that personally.
And it's even frustrating from the local level too. So we have a guy that goes to church with us, and he's running for state house representative.
I'm not getting in this conversation.
Yeah. Anyway,
think
we have gotten four pieces of mail from this dude. And they all look the same, but I don't understand why they're sending 4 to the same household. It just seems like such a waste, but they just try to cram everything. They have budgets and they have to spend the money. So instead of doing something wise with the money, they send us, I guess, toilet paper. Here, you throw this away. I don't know. I don't understand the amount of money that's spent on all these campaigns. It's just like flushing. It's just flushing so much money down the drain.
Apparently, it's huge business. And we could be missing the boat for all we know, because it's such.
That's the next channel. That's the next channel.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. But because it's just like pissing money down the drain. It's not like these mailers and everything have like a long shelf life. It's like you see them and you throw them out. It's like, what are you bothering me for? Oh well.
I want to know the person that's ever been swayed by that postcard with the candidate's family on it.
I can't think of very many that have. Although I am impressed by that one politician in Virginia that put out a picture of a fake family and said it was his. That's an interesting concept. If we're looking for creative people.
All right, I want to make we're way off. We're way off right now.